Welcome. I'm Marty Goldenson in for Brian Lehrer. Today, a whole list of questions that need answering. How did a fledgling legal argument against Obamacare land in the Supreme Court? Why do investigative journalists need you to copy the public files at your local TV station? And how long until you can print out a new pair of Uggs, for example, at your desk? But to begin, a critical question involving two lions on Fifth Avenue. What is happening to the New York Public Library? An ambitious billion-dollar plan to renovate the flagship building at 42nd Street and to overhaul the branches is back in motion. Supporters say that the changes will bring the main library into the 21st century and give ordinary people far more space to study. Detractors, however, fear new priorities will undermine the library as a premier institution for research. Of course, it is much more complicated than this summary, and rumors abound. The library's president and CEO, Tony Marks, is here to help us catalog what is fiction and what is nonfiction. So how about that summary? Is it rumor, or is there a balance there between research and letting ordinary people use this as a lending library? Are you going in some direction that some people don't like?
Well, the New York Public Library is uniquely both a great research scholarly place and collection. It is also the largest circulating library in the world, and we have to continue to be both and to be best at both. That means we need to ensure access to unique collections and space and services for scholars to invent new ideas and to feed the democracy. But we also need to have the right for the citizenry to become informed, have access to computers, to quiet space, to books, so that they can do their work and to provide them with the educational programming. The New York Public Library is the free institution of education for all New Yorkers, and we have to be able to continue to do that as well.
Now, you want to be able to continue to do both, so why change anything?
Well, the world of libraries and of books is changing. We know that. For instance, we're going to have to make sure that as people increasingly read digitally, that those who can't afford to buy books will be able to afford subscriptions or get subscriptions through us to be able to read everything they want digitally. The world is changing. This is a Gutenberg moment for libraries, including for the largest library in the world.
Right, now tell me about physically what's going to change in the library. I gather certain things, stacks are going out, certain number of books are being removed. The great architect Norman Foster is being hired to make some new spaces. This is both a wonderful vision, maybe controversial, but tell me the vision. What's it going to look like? What's it going to be like?
Sure. Well, this is at the main building on 42nd Street behind the two great lions on Fifth Avenue. And the third floor, which is the redoubt of scholars, will continue to look exactly the way it does.
The Rose Reading Room.
The Rose Reading Room, the special collections rooms. That is essential for the scholarly community, and they need access to one of the great research collections.
Now, right now, there's stacks below there.
There are 3 million books below the Rose Reading Room. We have space for about half of those in storage under Bryant Park. And we have space for probably another 1 million or so in the building without using the stacks.
Now, what do you want to put in that space instead?
Well, the stacks are out of date. The books are decaying back there.
Right.
So we need a better preservation environment. And
Some of them will be shipped off to what? To Princeton? Is there?
So we have off-site in New Jersey, but we'll only send books there that are in many other libraries or are available digitally. If it's a book that people use frequently, or in fact at all as far as we can tell, or a unique collection that if it isn't on site people won't use it at all, that all needs to stay on site. The truth is we're exploring exactly how many books are in each category. If we need to make space for 1 million more books than we had originally planned, to be sure to continue to be the great research library that we are, we'll do that too.
Okay, so the stacks go out. What goes in?
We'll bring the Mid-Manhattan Library into the building.
The one across the street, the busy People's Library.
It is the largest circulating facility of any library in the world.
Right, just below you on the other side of Fifth. Right?
Exactly, and it is decaying. It needs physical help to
continue to survive. And if you sell it, it's going to help your budget, right?
In addition, this way we can create a new Mid-Manhattan and a science and industry and business library in what is now the stacks without ever closing those facilities. The alternative would be to renovate Mid-Manhattan, which needs renovation. That would cost us more money and it would mean that Mid-Manhattan would be closed for a year or two, which is unacceptable.
Right, so this becomes a circulating library like the one across the street, like Donnell was, and we would include the business library that's in the building we happen to be recording in, by the way. Tell me about that space. Is that the space that Norman Foster's doing?
So Norman Foster is conceptualizing now how to think about.
I think we have a picture of what conception. Look over here.
So you'd walk through the main exhibition space and through a door that's now closed, and you would enter into a space that's 2 blocks long, 8 stack stories high, and a quarter of a block wide. It's the largest indoor space in Manhattan. And that's where the new Mid-Manhattan and Science and Industry and Business Library would be. Completely state-of-the-art with a circulating collection. We'd have circulating browsable books in the main building for the first time in 50 years. Bookstores are going out of business. People need to be able to browse, but the building will be both. You'll be able to walk in from the ground floor into the circulating library, or you can still walk in between the Lions on Fifth Avenue, go up the grand staircase, go to the 3rd floor, which will look the same, or we hope to create on the 2nd floor a center for all writers in New York. Space for 400 people who are writing their first novel, freelancers, veteran writers.
Well, how are you going to cut this down to 400? I'll never know. I think there's 8 million people writing their novel in the New York area. So you'll have to figure that out.
We will have
but
to
right now, there's not nearly that much space for people to have quiet space for writing, private space, right?
We will have more quiet space in this building, and we will have the largest circulating library in the world. It's a huge building, and if we can make sure that the collection is stored, the majority on site, everything that anyone will possibly need on site, make additional space for that if necessary, then we can have the best of both worlds. We wouldn't do this project if we aren't convinced that the scholars and writers and the public will all have better facilities and better access to collections as a result of it.
Sounds very positive. What about the rest of the system? You've got 87 other libraries, literally, right? 87 spread around.
We do. Including in the poorest neighborhoods of New York.
Right. I hear the vision for the Central Library at 42nd Street. Tell me about this other vision. How do you see libraries in communities? What's their purpose nowadays?
Well, if you go into any of those branches, they are chock-a-block. Every seat is filled. People are waiting for computers because they don't have computers at home or Wi-Fi at home. They don't have quiet place at home. They don't have books at home. They don't have heating or air conditioning sometimes at home. This is the place where New Yorkers come together across differences for thinking purposes, which doesn't happen enough in our society. We need to preserve that. The city does its best, but its budget is strained. So we need to continue to provide those facilities, but we also need to be more proactive in providing educational programs to New Yorkers.
Teaching English, for example?
We are the leading free provider of English second language, but we need to do much more than that because New York is still the town of immigrants. We are the leading free provider of computer skills training. You can't move in this economy without those basic skills. We need to be doing much more of that. And we're talking with the school system about how we can become the largest provider of after-school extended day programs so that we can help student achievement in this town.
With all those sort of intellectual and social responsibilities, feel free to drink, by the way, while I ask this question, because you've been talking a lot and I've been resting. With all those social responsibilities and all those intellectual responsibilities, wouldn't it be nice if you had all the money that the Library of Congress had, or at least some libraries in other countries which are completely funded by the city they're in or the country they're in? You're only partially funded by the city. Right. You have to raise what percentage of your money through your board?
Right. About half of the budget comes from return on the endowment or private donations, and that largely supports the research function.
Right.
The city provides much of the support, and valiantly so, for the branch libraries. That's a deal that goes back to Andrew Carnegie 100 years ago. But the city doesn't have all the resources that we need, including to do the additional educational programming that we're talking about.
So you spend a lot of time fundraising.
We spend a lot of time fundraising, but we also have to be thoughtful about the money that we have. So going back to the Central Library plan on 42nd Street, by consolidating 3 facilities into one.
Which is to say, let me just review here, you
create a new Mid-Manhattan.
You get the income from selling that building at the Mid-Manhattan Library at
Right.
40th, is it?
Right.
And then the Donnell Library thing is
That's paying, in effect, for the replacement Donnell, which is online.
Right, and then what's the third ingredient?
The Science and Industry and Business
Right here.
Library in this building on 34th
Which was the old
Street.
A&S department store at 34th and
By
Fifth.
consolidating 3 facilities into one, we think we can save something like $10 to $15 million a year of operating costs without doing any layoffs.
And do you use that money for this $1 billion plan, et cetera, or does that money go in the endowment?
Money in the endowment, or the equivalent of money in the endowment, supports the research function. So this plan allows us to provide a better facility on 42nd Street for all constituents, open till 11 o'clock at night, the real centerpiece for everyone who's doing thinking work in New York.
You close at 8 now, right?
Exactly.
Right.
And we'll also have more resources to spend on curators and buying for the research collection, which the city cannot provide us adequate funds for.
Right. Well, there's not adequate funds for every kind of curator. I mean, I know you had to, not that recently, but lay off some curators from some Asian collection, and other things had to be consolidated and go. So some things are not as robust as they used to be, right?
Our commitment is, if we have a collection, particularly a unique collection, that people come from all over the world to use, we need to have that collection available to scholars, and we need curatorial help to help people navigate those collections.
Yes.
We'll have more resources to do this when this plan is done.
I'm glad you brought up navigation, because it reminded me of a question I totally forgot about, which is this. In the age of Google, in the age of searching for things yourself online, why do you need a research library? Obviously, there's certain books that aren't online, obviously, but in terms of searching, investigating, will it still be possible to have a guide to go to the library and find that guide?
I think as more information is available to more people, including digitally, people need expert help more. When 40 million volumes, which is what's going to happen, will be available online, and you plug in mug, you're going to be swamped with more information. You'll still need a research librarian who will tell you what the quality information is. You'll need that kind of help more, and we'll need the resources to provide it.
Does some of this passion you have for the library come out of growing up in Inwood and going to the library as a kid?
Absolutely.
Tell me about that. What was it
well,
like for you?
Well, I think libraries for so many of us are the place where we suddenly realize there's a world of information that we can get access to that we don't have at home. And there are other people who are in the room looking for it. We need not only the books, but we need to see other people using books, to see how important that is, to be inspired by the space and by other people doing thinking work. No, the library was crucial for me, as it is I go around, I've been to, I think, 86 of our branches so far. I have 2 more to go. It's just awesome to see New Yorkers at work in the library. As the economy goes down, more New Yorkers rely on the library because they don't have computers or books at home.
Sure, sure. Just when you have less money.
Exactly.
All right, good. I see the plan and understand it.
Well, we're excited about it. Our commitment is to be the great library for the information capital of the world, which is New York, and for all scholars and researchers globally.
Thanks for coming by.
It's great to be here, Marty. Thanks.
Up next, the Supreme Court and the blogosphere.
Did you know CUNY leads the way for students with disabilities?
CUNY Leads means linking employment, academics, and disability services. If you're a CUNY student with a visible or invisible disability, the City University of New York offers eligible students free career development and placement services. To find out if you qualify, visit cuny.edu/CUNYLeads. CUNY Leads, to the career I always wanted.
Mom, I'm not gonna go to college.
What are you saying? You've got to go to college.
Well, they offered me a job and...
Son, college is much more important.
No.
Yes.
No, Mom.
Yes.
Anyways, it's my decision.
Okay, well then decide what degree you're going to get because you will go to college.
Their tomorrow depends on your words today. The Hispanic Scholarship Fund has the information you need to help your kids go to college.
When you throw away money on wasted electricity, you're throwing away everything you could have bought with it. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at energysavers.gov.
We probably won't know until June if the Affordable Health Care Act, aka Obamacare, will survive the legal challenges against it. But if a certain line of questioning by some Supreme Court justices this past week is any indication, the individual mandate requiring most Americans to have health care insurance is under grave threat, and maybe the entire act is. Many legal scholars once thought that the case against the individual mandate was frivolous, sophistry about active versus inactive commerce. This is no longer true, and it turns out that a group of legal bloggers may have helped bring about that shift. Our next guest, Adam Teicholz, a former judicial clerk in the 10th Circuit, has traced the influence of legal bloggers in the fight to bring down Obamacare. He wrote a piece about this in The Atlantic magazine, and he's here with us. Thanks for coming in.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
So help us trace this. Everybody's talking about, no one knows what the court is exactly going to do. But their influence is on the court, and they care about public opinion, I assume, on some level. So let's trace this. How did this notion that Obamacare was unconstitutional begin?
So the exact mechanism of how it made it into the mainstream, nobody understands, really.
Right.
But
it's overdetermined and too complex, but let's do the outlines of it.
Well, when it was first introduced as an idea in Congress during the debates, it didn't occur to anybody that there would be any constitutional problems with it. But very quickly, it became a source of controversy among conservative academics. David Casey and Lee Rivkin wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post.
Right.
And nobody paid it much mind at first. Nancy Pelosi famously said, "Are you kidding me?" when she heard that there were going to be constitutional challenges to the individual mandate.
But those two guys were both political and scholars, right?
Well, they're not really scholars. They have a background in the Justice Department, and they are frequent contributors to the Washington Post editorial pages.
Sure.
But
From the right.
From the right. These weren't really academics at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But academia quickly picked it up, particularly in fora that didn't exist very long ago, blogs.
Right, exactly. So what bloggers picked this up, or what blogs debated this? Because we were not talking about something recent. This started to be discussed 2 years ago, right?
The possibility that it would end up in the Affordable Care Act first came up in late summer, early fall of 2009.
Right, quite a while ago.
It was quite a while ago. And that was when the Washington Post op-ed came out, and there was a little flurry of debate about it then, but it didn't really pick up again until March, when President Obama signed the bill into law.
Right, but it was simmering all that time. This was an argument about the constitutionality of Obamacare, especially this mandate that you had to buy in, right?
You had to have it, yeah.
Right, you had to have it. Suddenly, as if mugged by reality, liberals are saying, "Oh my goodness, this just suddenly appeared." But it was simmering for 2 years, it seems to me, and being discussed in the blogosphere. Especially, what's that one blog?
The Volokh Conspiracy.
Yes, the Volokh Conspiracy.
A group.
It sounds to me like the liberals, or even the people who are moderates, are not reading the conservative or taking conservatives seriously.
So looking back now in 2011, it seems astonishing that such a small thing could have become such a big thing, the inactivity-activity distinction.
Yeah, describe that. You're a lawyer. You can explain this much better than I can. This has to do with the Commerce Clause. Can you try this?
Sure. There are only certain things that the federal government can do. Anything else, by default, goes back to the states. And one of those things that the federal government can do is regulate interstate commerce. And a tremendous amount of the regulation that we have right now comes from Congress's ability to regulate interstate commerce. And that was the justification that President Obama and the Democrats gave for the individual mandate.
Right. The fact is that the healthcare business is extremely complex, and it may be that this is perfectly constitutional and it may pass judgment as constitutional. It may go either way. Did you have any sense from the way the debate went, the initial discussion, as to how it might go?
Well, the actual words activity and activity were barely mentioned in the debate. You know, what I write about in the article is how there's a robust sort of public diplomacy campaign to try to change public opinion about the individual mandate. You know, there have been polls about whether Americans think that it's constitutional or not constitutional, and there's been a huge drop in the number of Americans.
Yes, in your article, yeah, it was very surprising. Half the people thought it was constitutional, half thought it was unconstitutional. It dropped down to 28% thought it was.
That's right.
But interestingly, it didn't correlate with people who were for or against Obamacare.
Right. What I found was that, in fact, the popularity of the individual mandate has remained low but steady from the time
just below 50%.
Started. Yeah, from the time polling started in early 2010, whereas the Americans' belief about its constitutionality has plummeted. So there's clearly something very interesting going on.
Right. So it's clearly reached the public. Now the question is, how does the blogosphere, how did that whole wave of thinking, some of which came from academia, from political people, how does that reach members of the Supreme Court? Does it happen through people like you who when you were a clerk, prepare the members of the court because you're reading blogs, right?
Sure, absolutely. And I spoke to a couple of Supreme Court clerks for the article who told me that it does read, well, the justices won't talk about their own blog reading habits.
No.
But
it percolates up.
Absolutely. First of all, in ways, just sort of the zeitgeist about these legal ideas, but also particularly because the clerks, you know, they'll go to SCOTUS blog, they'll go to Volokh, they'll read these things in order to understand the latest scholarship on the issues that their cases are about.
And of course, sort of behind all that is that the members of the court who are supposed to be making these decisions without paying any attention to public opinion or the sort of state of history actually do, right?
Absolutely. And I don't think that anybody there are no Supreme Court justices who are looking at polling numbers, either about the popularity of a law as a policy matter or about Americans' beliefs about its constitutionality, and saying, okay, I'm going to go with that. But there is absolutely two strong influences on the court, and there's been a tremendous amount of empirical research that has gone to show this. One is sort of legal elites and what they think about the constitutionality of a law. You know, their peers, you know, the Washington dinner parties.
Yes.
And the other is public opinion generally. And the latter is fairly easy to measure, and the studies have been getting better over the years. And it shows that, you know, not in individual cases, but about broad areas of the law, there is a correlation between public opinion and the decisions of the court.
Not surprised, and of course that, we're out of time, but tell me if I'm right or wrong, that echo chamber that creates public opinion because of the web, because of the blogosphere, is noisier than ever and more likely to find its way into the Supreme Court building. No?
Which is a wonderful thing in some ways, right? There's been a real democratization of the process. And what I put in the article is that it's become both louder, the echo chamber.
Yes.
You know, there's more direct routes to the justices' ears.
Yes.
But it's also become much bigger. And there are people that reporters would never have talked to. Random professors in the Midwest that didn't make it, that are just as smart as the ones at Harvard, that are now being part of the discussion in interesting ways.
So everyone can be an elite.
Everyone can be an elite, for better and for worse. It's been the way of the law for the past 20 years or so.
Thanks for coming by.
Thanks a lot.
Coming up next, The super PACs raise it and the TV stations rake it in. Campaign broadcasting 2012 style.
My name's Reggie. Just recently, my wife and I took in her sister's children. Now, we already had 4, so I went from becoming a family man to a man with a bigger family. Now, you can't eat love, so I don't know how I'm gonna feed them tonight. How was that, Rich?
I think I look more like Denzel.
That's cold, man.
Play a role in ending hunger. Visit feedingamerica.org/hunger and find your local food bank. Traditional light bulbs actually generate 9 times more heat than light. Switch to Energy Star light bulbs, and you'll realize just how much cash you are really burning through. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at energysavers.gov.
Spending on televised political advertising is predicted to set a record this year, more than $3 billion, up about 60% from the last presidential campaign. Local broadcasters will be raking it in, but they don't have to put the details of who paid what online, and they are resisting an FCC request to do so. So the journalists at ProPublica are making it happen with the public's help. Meanwhile, one commentator has a suggestion for these fortunate broadcasters: spend some of this windfall on the news. That commentator, Bill Wheatley, is here. Bill was executive vice president of NBC News and writes for Neiman Watch. And Daniel Victor is here too, from ProPublica. He's social media editor there, and I would advise people to take notes because you may have an assignment for them to look into the public files of TV stations by the end of this broadcast. So let's begin with you. The question is, why look into these files? I thought it was sort of public knowledge. Everybody knows who gives to what campaigns and how much is spent.
Well, what these files show is exactly who is buying these ads, what times they're showing on this channel, and also the price that they are paying for these. So the campaigns and the super PACs are required to submit certain expenses to the FEC. They will show at large, this is how much money we spent in Wisconsin, for example. But it won't itemize to which market, to which program, etc. So
you won't know if one particular member of Congress has lost in the last week of his campaign because some super PAC with Karl Rove behind it, to pick a random example, has thrown in $500,000 for a week.
We would be able to see very clearly which markets they had targeted. So if they feel that Madison is particularly vulnerable and they need to hit a certain message, this would reveal exactly how much money they spent on it.
How much they spent. Okay, and it is public record in the sense that you can go in, any individual can ask a television or radio station to look into their public folder, right? Their public files.
Yeah, they, as part of using the public spectrum, the public airwaves, they are required. So if you walk into that station and you say, I would like to see the public file, they have to show you. Somebody on their staff has to take 15 minutes out of their day to walk you back to a room and let you look through a file cabinet.
Right. Well, we'll get to why they're resisting putting this on the web in a second, but Bill Wheatley, I want to ask you about this. Pretend for a moment you're on the other side of this. You're running this radio station in Wisconsin or somewhere, or TV station. Money is pouring in like crazy, right?
Well, if you have a major race going in your market area, absolutely. And this year, of course, we have the national elections, the presidency and the congressional elections, and therefore the stakes go way up. And if your state happens to be a battleground state, one of the most closely contested, then the money really is pouring in.
Now, there's a wrinkle here, though, which makes this year's even sort of more lucrative, which is if I'm running for office, the TV station has to give me a good rate, right? The lowest possible rate, no? For my advertisement, but not if I'm a super PAC?
Correct.
Explain this.
Yes, if you're a candidate for office and your campaign is buying ads, under the rules, in effect, you have to be offered the lowest rate. However, if you're a super PAC, those rules don't apply, and you have to pay whatever the going rate is, and sometimes that's the highest rate. So the super PAC money turns out to be especially advantageous to the stations.
All right, so the stations take in a load of money, make really pile of money in a campaign year. You have a suggestion for them. Tell me what it is.
Well, because many of the advertisements in politics are negative, misleading, downright untruthful, my suggestion has been that the stations do something that I call windfall tithing, with a bow to traditional religious practice. Take the money spent on ads at your station and take 10% of that and put it into improved coverage of the campaigns that affect your area, do lots of reality checks, interviews with candidates, debates, town hall meetings, et cetera, to help balance the negative effects of some of those ads.
Well, and how's this been met? Is it this
with
idea of yours?
Silence from the
stunning
stations.
silence. Although I think, and I saw a piece that you wrote, that some people are doing, not necessarily the tithing, but they're doing a good job.
Right. There are station groups around the country,
such as
Post Newsweek, Hearst, a few others, that take all of this very seriously, and every 4 years expand their amount of government and politics coverage and do the sort of reality checks and other type of investigative work, and they're going to do that again this year. I'm pleased to see that some of them are working with national organizations like the Center for Responsive Politics, PolitiFact from the Tampa Bay Times, to gain information from those groups which collect large amounts of information, and the stations will work with them to get information on their local areas.
Well, that's good. I'm sorry that your idea is not being, maybe you've got to find some way to shame people more. But at least you've raised it.
There'll be lots of money coming in, and 10% of it spread out around the country would be several $100 million that could go into coverage.
That would be great. Now, let's get back to this, what ProPublica is doing, which is ask, if you tried on your own to go to every market in the country and open the public files of the television stations and look at the bills and see who's buying what ads and what super PAC is buying what ad, you would very quickly run out of the best thing that you have at ProPublica, which is investigative journalists.
Right.
So what's the solution? What have you done?
What we're doing is we're recruiting people to go to their own stations. It's not an issue of people doing our work for us. It's simply impractical for any one person or any one news organization to hit every television station in every market in the United States, or even just in the swing states. So if people are willing to do that, and people have been willing to do that, we already have about 170 people who have signed up to help us.
In how many markets?
About 60 markets so far in 36.
And how many markets are there in the country?
I believe it's 210, so we've got a ways to go.
Yeah.
But
the former head of NBC News will know how many markets there are in the country.
Executive Vice President.
Executive Vice President.
There's about 206.
206 markets. Oh, wait, so you're getting there.
So if we can get people to show up to their local markets and then make copies of the files, scan and email them to us, then we have the abilities to put those files online so that the local newspaper can put them on their own site, we'll put it on our site, and then more importantly, we can also have our investigative journalists look through that data and try to find the scofflaws, the missing money, whatever else may be out there.
Right, because you have to report it. Are people just going to take pictures with their iPhones of these bills, et cetera, and send them to you? Or are you going to take that information and make a nice app out of it, which is a lot of work?
It is a lot of work.
And put it on the web that way?
We have, most stations will let you make copies, so we are having people make copies and then scan and email them to us. So that way, instead of us sorting through the data, which we do have that ambition to do eventually if possible, but we can let people see the original documents themselves. That way, instead of questioning whether or not somebody might have missed a line or put 100,000 when they meant 10,000, this way people can see for themselves exactly what the data is.
I admire greatly what ProPublica is doing here. But the truth is, you shouldn't have to do this. The stations already collect the information. There's no reason why it couldn't easily be posted online.
It's interesting because they use that argument with the FCC that it's difficult to put it online, and that's why they say, don't make us do this.
Well, there's very few requirements these days of a television licensee, and to have a clerk enter the information in a computer and distribute it doesn't seem to me, particularly given the large amounts of money that are flowing in, to be a particularly difficult exercise.
And it's worth noting that every time one of our contributors will go to the station, one of their employees has to spend 15, 20 minutes chaperoning that person. So that's time that's already being spent.
Right. Now, one of the sort of fortunate caveats in a difficult decision, Citizens United, was that if we're going to allow these super PACs, it's safe. I think Kennedy wrote this, Justice Kennedy, as long as there's transparency. At the moment, we have not much transparency. I thought the whole idea of the super PAC was you didn't have to report much compared to the campaigns. What do you have to and not have to report if you're a super PAC? And doesn't that limit what you can find out when you send your troops to the stations?
If you're a super PAC, you do have to disclose your donors, but there's several months of lag there. So people can make donations and know that they won't be revealed for several months.
That's dark money?
We have used the term dark money for that, but another element of that is that there's these groups, 501c4s, and you may think of them as groups like the AARP, NAACP, local labor unions, whatever it may be, but there can also be groups that declared themselves to be social welfare groups. Now, they can distribute a couple pamphlets on an issue of choice, but then also make unlimited donations to a super PAC. And unlike super PACs who have to disclose their donors, these 501c4s do not. So there are all sorts of ways that you can get your money to the super PACs if you want.
But nonetheless, you will find out a fair amount of information by digging into the public files, right?
Correct. We, in one way, it's a check to make sure that the information that's being reported is accurate. In another way, we want to make sure that people truly are submitting that information. If they aren't, this could be our way of smoking them out.
I don't think you can underestimate the importance of the Citizens United decision in terms of affecting political life in the United States. We were already seeing it during the Republican primaries this year, in which super PACs have funded huge amounts of negative advertising, in some cases single-handedly kept candidates going with one or two contributors contributing millions and millions of dollars. So the Supreme Court has set something in motion here. We don't know yet how it's all going to turn out, but we're beginning to see in the first presidential election year since the court ruled, we're beginning to see some very, very prominent effects of it.
Let me back up for the last 2 minutes we have and ask you about the responsibility of television and radio stations, of broadcasters in America. Because as I understand it, the airwaves, which are a precious and limited commodity, are basically handed out to corporations. And they used to have a lot of responsibilities, meet a lot of responsibilities in order to get this gift from the federal government, this loan. And that included doing news in your local area, and all kinds of public affairs programming, and meeting their sort of local responsibilities. Is anything asked of stations right now? Because it seems to me all they're asking is put your files online, and they don't even want to do that. What has happened to this, what I always thought of as a license to print money?
Well, the very little is asked of the stations these days, and most of it is technical in nature, not interfering with other broadcasters, that sorts of thing. Since the fairness doctrine was done away with a number of years ago, and since the spectrum of broadcasters has increased greatly, since the period of substantial deregulation has occurred, very little is asked of them these days. Many do operate in the public interest, of course. Many have good, strong news departments, but many do not. And even those that have good, strong news departments, many of them don't feel prevailed upon to go the extra mile in an election year and go all out and do the best job they can.
Finally, Daniel, I asked you to the viewers to take out a pencil and paper in case you need them to be investigative reporters, which is to say to go to their local TV and radio stations and look up things. Where do they go on the web to find out how to sign up? What's that process?
At propublica.org, we have a couple stories, and I believe trying to remember if it's on the homepage right now. If it's not, look up Daniel Victor on propublica.org, and there are a couple stories that will have a form that you can fill out that says what television market you're willing to check, and then I will send you directions.
And how do you behave when you get there?
Very, very respectfully. And I should mention that people have been very professional. The staff and the staffers at the stations have been wonderful, and there's no reason to treat them with anything less than respect.
Thanks for coming, both of you.
Thank you.
Finally, got a printer at home? We take it for granted, but actually it's pretty amazing. You type on your computer, and in seconds it's on paper with color pictures too. Gutenberg would be astounded. Well, now it is time for you to be astounded. If you had a 3D printer, you could draw an object on your computer, hit print, and soon have that object in your hand. It's being done today by people making prototypes, and the 3D printer could replace manufacturing and shipping. Order a chair and online, and it's printed before your eyes. Of course, we are not there yet. Where are we in the evolution of 3D printing? New York startup Shapeways.com is a 3D printing marketplace and community. And in this video, you can see some of their work taking shape.
Get behind me.
.3D printing. What does it mean for the future of art, of craft, design, manufacturing? And what's this startup called Shapeways? With us, Shapeways co-founder, Peter Weimerhausen, is that right?
Yes.
Or close enough. And Karine Carmy, right?
Yes.
Good. You're Shapeways marketing director. So in front of us is all kinds of wonderful products that have been printed. This is sort of hard to believe. So let's before we look at it and marvel at it, 3D printing's been around for 20, 30 years, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. 3D printing, I think, started to be commercially used in the late 1980s. And it has been used throughout for aircraft, for automotive, mostly for prototyping purposes.
Right, which is to say, a company decides to make a new version of their fuel pump or whatever they want to make, and instead of having to spend many thousands of dollars crafting it by hand, they draw it on screen, right, on 3D, and hit print.
Yeah, so with the advent of design by computer, which was happening towards the 1990s, companies more and more had digital designs of what they were making. And these machines, these 3D printers, can take that design file from your computer and make it into a physical object.
Now, when I first heard about these years ago, they were probably very primitive. They were really expensive. And tell me, you would know this probably because you're in the marketing side. What did they used to cost? What do they cost now for a 3D printer?
For the printers themselves, that's a good question. Pete has been studying the space for a long time, so he can tell you, all the data of the past. But now the printers we use are still around $200,000 to $1 million. So they're really high-end printers, and you can print final products. So this cup, which is 3D printed ceramic that we drink our coffee out of in the office.
Right.
But you also have printers now which are kind of desktop printers for the home, and you can get those south of $5,000. So it's a really radical difference from where we used to be.
I see. Yeah, I get it. By the way, your earrings.
They're printed.
They're
yes.
printed, right?
Yeah, what's beautiful about these, and kind of says something about the technology,
Yes.
is they're actually interlocked cubes. So similar concept to this piece here, where it's all printed in one shot,
Right.
and a design that was previously impossible. And these to make cost, maybe $10, and I can have beautiful printed, earrings with a shape that was previously impossible.
This would be very hard to craft, but easier to draw, right?
Perhaps, yes.
And so you draw it, and then it exists, right?
Yes.
Magic, right?
Yep.
It's too difficult to go into the technology of how these things work, these printers. But one thing I think is marvelous, and tell me if I have this right or not, is that for the last few thousand years, if you wanted to make a sculpture, or a baseball bat for that matter, you took a large object, wood or stone, and you pared away at it until what was left was the baseball bat or Michelangelo's David, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is the opposite, right? This builds up from nothing and gives you just the object. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. So a technical term is called additive manufacturing for
additive manufacturing
for this process. Basically, as you saw in the video, it's layer by layer the material is deposited, and then different processes, either a laser or really a head uses inked or a glue, binds the material together.
Right.
And then
the glue hardens with what, ultraviolet light sometimes, right?
Yes, sometimes it uses light, or
My
sometimes...
dentist uses that on me. Puts a little stuff in there and hits it with ultraviolet light and it hardens. And that's how you harden each layer, right?
Yeah. So, but the cool thing is, by doing that and doing that in large volume, now you can start making things that are not only prototypes, but you can also start making real products.
Now let's talk about that. Right now, companies can save a fortune by prototyping, right? The dream is that one day you will, as I suggested in the introduction, I don't know if I made that up or not, you could actually manufacture something at home. All you would have to do is, in a sense, buy the license from whatever company, the Amazon of the future. You would say, I would like this chair or this pair of Uggs, and you would press a button, it would make it for you. This is possible one day?
Perhaps.
Or is it too much of a dream?
I don't know. It's hard to answer because if you look at parallels, because predicting the future is typically looking at what has happened already.
Yes.
And if we think about printers, as you stated, that you used for printing a text on paper, we have those at home. Most people do have those at home today. But still, we also go to services that we use for printing photographs, or that we use to print flyers, or that we use to print our business cards on.
True.
So I think there will be a market for having those machines at home, but there will also be a market for using services for more higher-end materials. Definitely, currently, it is true that you can have a machine which is like in the $1,000 to $2,000 range. There's even a company here in New York called MakerBot that does that. And you can make plastic products at home. However, if you want to have more higher-end materials like stainless steel, like ceramics, like silver,
yes.
Those machines are still extremely expensive. And what we do is make sure that, because everybody else uses them together, we make the output, the products that you get from them, pretty affordable.
Well, let's go back and talk about just that, which is what Shapeways is and what you do. And so, Corinne, fill us in. You have a physical place where there are machines that can print out products, and you have an online outreach for marketing. How does that work? Who uses it, and how do you sell things? How do you create and sell?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's definitely a different business model when you think about a website where we're both a manufacturer and a retailer for our customers. But essentially, shapeways.com is probably the main point of contact for most people, where you can go online, upload your model, your render if you're a designer, Or if you're someone like me who has no design skills, I can browse beautiful products and see what other people have made. And then once someone clicks buy, it goes to our production facilities and we print everything on demand. So what that means is you can start making personalized products in a way that wasn't possible before.
Such as?
So this is actually a really cool example.
Hold it up a little bit.
This is an iPhone case that has, it was a partnership with SoundCloud, which is an amazing, amazing website platform for sound and music on the web. And you can type in your favorite song and get it printed on the back of this iPhone case. So, or you could have someone saying, you know, Mom, I love you, Mother's Day is coming up. And they can get that personalized on a phone. That's something they carry with them all the time. And there's lots of other things like cufflinks where you can put your initials on them, or if you're a company and you have your logo. And this is just the beginning. And honestly, what's so exciting about all of this is we don't even know what people are going to make. We were sitting at the table earlier and looking at all these products, and I said, Pete, you know, 3 years ago, did you think people would be making sunglasses or wedding rings or?
Right, and they're all here. One of the things that I did see that your people make is a toy adapter that is, oh, it's not you, but that I did see that's printed by a 3D printer. Are these toy adapters? Do you know what they are? Have you seen them? We have a video of this. Show this to us. I'd like to hear your reaction.
Ever wanted to connect your Legos and Tinker Toys? How about your Duplos, Bristle Blocks, and Lincoln Logs? Now you can, and much more with the free Universal Construction Kit. The free Universal Construction Kit and the special Universal Adapter Brick allow you to combine all your old playsets to create something new. Think outside the box with this amazing collection of adapters. Connect toys which previously couldn't fit together. Create strange new hybrids, monsters, and mashups. Imagine an endless world of designs. The free Universal Construction Kit is available on thinkfirst.com. Some assembly required.
Yeah, those are people who are more interested in just being open source, and they're not too interested in making money, but it's a wonderful idea. I was that kind of kid. I was always trying to put together my Erector set with the Tinker Toys and all that stuff. I would have liked a universal adapter when I was that size.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Was little. And those things are printed out. So there's an example of someone who has a wonderful idea, and instead of having to go to a manufacturer, right, and convince them to make a small, expensive, small run of this product, they draw it, and it's there. And if they wanted to bring it to you, you would print it for them, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And, right. And then how would the money work?
If they were to set up a business, for example, they could upload their models to Shapeways and decide, well, our time is worth X amount, and add that on top of the design. And what's so amazing for independent designers is that they can essentially make money in their sleep. Once the design is online and you promote the design, and you can really just focus on, instead of thinking about customer service and fulfillment and inventory and all that kind of stuff, you can just make everything on demand for your customers.
And tell me about the community here in New York and that you pull together. Who are these people? Do they ever get to see each other, or is it all done virtually?
Of course they get to see each other. There is this great concept called meetups. And,
meetups, yeah.
Yep. And what you do is you find a location, and in the beginning they were small, and you put an invite on Meetup, and people hear about it. And they come to this place. They bring what they've made, and this free universal kit that you just showed is just one of the things. And it shows people find their own things that are important to them, and they'll make it, right?
And I'm sorry to interrupt, but at these meetups they exchange technological ideas?
Yeah. All kinds of ideas, problems they solved, problems they encountered, they share their successes, they share their questions. And if you go there, you'll see that the passion is so powerful. People are really excited that all of a sudden they can solve problems. Like you said about yourself, right? If you work at, you would like to have this kind of capability because you want to intermix your toys, or you want to, repair things that are broken and you cannot get spare parts for, or, all the things that you couldn't do in the past, you can now do.
So in a way, Shapeways is a startup for startups.
Yes, in a way it is, yes.
Right. Now, there are other things on this table. Tell me about there's the Eiffel Tower here. Where did this come from? Whose idea was this? Do you remember?
Yeah, I think this is another great example of how powerful the internet together with this new technology is. Probably you've heard of Minecraft and the powerful community of people who make their own environment, their own world. And a few guys came up with this idea to take the designs that are already existing in that virtual world,
yes,
and make a connector to Shapeways. And now you can print it out. And one of the guys, I, to be honest, don't know who idea it was to make the Eiffel Tower per se, but you know, they downloaded it to Shapeways or uploaded, and you know, presto, you have your own Eiffel Tower.
Presto is the word. I feel a sort of excitement from you, and I imagine I would feel this if I went to a meetup, the kind of excitement that happened at the beginning of the internet, which is sort of intangible, and yours is tangible, but it's the same, you're on the edge of something new, aren't you? It seems like, is it unique to this country or New York, or are parallel things happening in Europe, for example?
Well, actually, we started in Europe with
Really?
Shapeways. Yes.
Where'd you start?
In Eindhoven, the Netherlands.
Really?
Yes. And in 2010, we decided to move our main office to New York.
How come?
Oh, all kinds of reasons. The United States was a big market already for us, so we wanted to have an office here. At that time, we also didn't have a technology team, and we were figuring, you know, either East or West Coast makes perfect sense to start a technology team in the United States. And then we also are, of course, heavily influenced by design. We are about design. Designers use us. So where do you go? Well, if you need technology and a mix with design, then New York City is a perfect choice.
And you get a good staff.
Yes, that too.
We're out of time. Thanks for coming. Very exciting.
Thank you so much.
And that's it for this week's show. We roll out a new episode Wednesday nights at 7:30, or see us anytime at CUNY.TV. Brian Lehrer will be back next week. I'm Marty Goldenson. Thanks for watching.